The cold bit through my coat like a personal insult. I'd been standing outside the Palazzo Real for 3 hours, balancing trays of champagne for guests who never looked at my face. Just the glass. Just the bubbles catching the light from crystal chandeliers I'd never afford to stand beneath as anything other than staff. My breath came out in clouds. I watched my reflection in a parked Bentley's tinted window, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear, smoothing the collar of my borrowed uniform. The fabric still smelled like the girl who'd quit last week. Smart girl. I should have been studying for my linguistics exam, not freezing outside a private gala for Milan's elite, but rent didn't negotiate, and my grandmother's medication cost more than my dignity. I leaned closer to the glass, checking my lipstick, the cheap kind that wore off after one cup of coffee. That's when I saw him, not my reflection, his. A man sitting in the back seat, perfectly still, watching me through the darkness with eyes that registered everything. I jerked back, my heart slamming against my ribs. The window didn't move. He didn't move. But I felt the weight of his gaze like a hand at my throat. I spun away, nearly dropping my empty tray, and rushed back toward the service entrance. My phone buzzed. Nana. I answered in the shadows between two delivery trucks, switching to the language of my grandmother's village without thinking. Nipote mia, she said, her voice thin as paper. The medication wasn't working. I could hear it in the pauses between her words. I responded in the same dialect, rapid and low, promising I'd be home soon, lying about having enough for next month's prescription. My throat closed around the words. Behind me, I heard footsteps, expensive shoes on cobblestone. That dialect, a voice said in perfect Italian, is from Calabria, southern coast. Not many people speak it anymore. I turned. The man from the Bentley stood 3 feet away, hands in the pockets of a coat that cost more than my year's tuition. He was younger than I'd expected, mid-30s maybe, with the kind of face that belonged in Renaissance paintings. Sharp, controlled, dangerous in a way that had nothing to do with violence and everything to do with certainty. I need to get back to work, I managed. You're wasted out here, he said. Not a compliment, an assessment. How many languages do you speak? 4 or 5 if you count, I stopped. This wasn't a conversation, this was something else. He pulled a card from his pocket, heavy stock, embossed. Massimo Caldari, I own this venue, among other things. He waited, letting me place the name. I did. Everyone in Milan knew the Caldari family, money, influence, rumors that never quite reached the newspapers. I don't understand, I said. You will, tomorrow, 10 a.m., this address. He handed me the card. Bring your transcripts. There's a position I need filled. 6 months. Salary negotiable, but it starts at more than you've made in the last 3 years combined. I can't just. Your grandmother needs a specialist, he said quietly. The kind that doesn't take insurance. I know because I make it my business to know things. This is a door. You can walk through it or stay in the cold, but you should know I don't offer twice. He walked away before I could respond, his cologne lingering in the frozen air, cedar and something darker like burnt sugar and smoke. I looked down at the card, a private address in Brera, the elegant district where artists and criminals lived in adjacent penthouses and no one asked questions. My hands were shaking, not from the cold. I showed up at 9:45, overdressed in the only professional outfit I owned, a blazer that didn't quite match the skirt. The building had no sign, just a brass number and a doorman who took one look at the card I held out and ushered me into an elevator that required a key to operate. The penthouse office was all windows and leather, the kind of space that made you aware of how much you didn't belong. Massimo sat behind a desk made of black walnut, reading something on his tablet. He didn't look up immediately. A test, maybe, or just the habit of a man who controlled every room he entered. Sit, he said finally. I sat, the chair was low, another test. He slid a folder across the desk. Your transcripts are impressive. University of Milan, top of your linguistics program, fluent in Italian, English, German, and he glanced up. Two Calabrian dialects most linguists don't acknowledge exist. You work 3 jobs. Your grandmother raised you after your parents died. You're 24 and exhausted. You had me investigated. I have everyone investigated. It's not personal, it's practical. He closed the tablet. I need a translator, not for business meetings or legal documents, for conversations that can't be recorded, dinners where the subtext matters more than the text, negotiations where trust is the only currency that spends. You mean illegal things? I mean complicated things. He stood, walked to the window. Milan stretched below us, beautiful and indifferent. I run a logistics company, import-export. We move goods across borders, facilitate connections, solve problems for people who can't use traditional channels. Some of it lives in gray areas. None of it involves violence against civilians. If you work for me, you'll never be asked to do anything that puts you in physical danger, but you will see things that require discretion. And if I say no, then you say no. I'll have my driver take you home. Your grandmother will continue to receive the standard care until her insurance runs out, and you'll go back to serving champagne to people who don't see you. He turned. But we both know you won't say no, because you're smart enough to recognize opportunity and desperate enough to take it. The word desperate stung because it was true. I thought of Nana, her hands shaking when she tried to hold her rosary. The way she pretended the pain wasn't getting worse. 6 months, I said, and I want it in writing. Salary, medical coverage for my grandmother, and a clause that lets me walk away if you ask me to do something that crosses my line. Your line, he repeated, something like amusement crossing his face. And where is that? I'll know it when I see it. He considered this, then nodded. Done. My lawyer will draw up the contract. In the meantime, he opened a drawer and pulled out an envelope. This is 3 months advance for your grandmother's immediate care. Consider it a signing bonus. I stared at the envelope. It was thick, too thick. I haven't even started yet. You started the moment you answered your phone in a dead language outside my car. I've been looking for someone like you for a year. The money isn't charity, it's investment. He sat on the edge of the desk, close enough that I could smell that cologne again. I take care of what's mine, Arya. I froze. I didn't tell you my name. I know, but I prefer it to the name on your ID. It suits you better. Arya Santoro, a melody from the South surviving in the industrial North. He handed me the envelope. Go take care of your grandmother. A car will pick you up Monday morning. 6 a.m. we're going to Zurich. Zurich. I told you, complicated things. He walked me to the elevator, his hand barely touching the small of my back, a gesture that felt protective and possessive in equal measure. One more thing, the people I work with will test you. They'll push boundaries, make offers, ask questions designed to find your weak points. Don't engage, don't accept gifts, don't answer anything you're not translating for me. Your loyalty is purchased. Make sure it stays that way. The elevator doors closed. I looked down at the envelope in my hands, my reflection ghosting across the brass. I looked different, not better, just seen. It wasn't until I was back on the street that I let myself open it. 50,000 euros, cash. I should have run. Instead, I bought my grandmother's medication and waited for Monday. The car arrived at exactly 6 a.m., not a Bentley this time. A dark Mercedes with windows that turned the world into a privacy screen. The driver didn't speak, just held the door and waited. I climbed in with my small suitcase and the weight of what I'd agreed to. Massimo was already in the back seat working on a laptop. He glanced up, nodded, and returned to his screen. No small talk. I appreciated that. The city slid past us in the pre-dawn light, familiar streets giving way to the highway, Milan shrinking in the rearview mirror. Have you traveled much? He asked after 20 minutes of silence. Only in books. Then today you'll learn the first rule of my world. Luxury isn't about comfort, it's about control. The more seamless everything appears, the more power moves behind the scenes. He closed the laptop. We're meeting with a man who facilitates financial instruments across European borders. He'll speak in German because he thinks it gives him an advantage. I need you to listen not just to his words, but to his hesitations. Every pause, every redirect. Can you do that? Yes. Good. When we land, you'll be introduced as my executive assistant. Not translator, not employee, partner. These men respect proximity to power more than credentials. You'll sit beside me. You'll take notes. You'll speak only when I signal you. Understood? I nodded. The car pulled into a private airfield, not commercial. No security lines or departure boards, just a jet waiting on the tarmac like a patient bird of prey. Inside, the cabin was all cream leather and polished wood. Massimo gestured to the seat across from him, then handed me a tablet. Background files on today's meeting. Memorize the key players. We have 90 minutes. I read while he made phone calls in 3 languages, his voice never rising, his instructions delivered with the precision of a conductor. I learned that the man we were meeting, Herr Klaus Fischer, specialized in creative accounting solutions for clients who needed money to move quietly, that he had ties to old German industrial families and newer Russian interests, that he liked Swiss watches and French wine, but drove a Volkswagen to signal humility he didn't possess. When the plane leveled out, Massimo stood and poured 2 glasses of water. He handed me one, then sat beside me instead of across. Closer. I could feel the heat of him through his suit. "You're nervous," he said. "I'm realistic. This is out of my depth." Depth is a choice. You're brilliant enough to survive university on scholarship while working full-time. This is just a different classroom. He took a slow sip of water, watching me over the rim. "Your grandmother, how is she this morning?" The question caught me off guard. "Better. She slept through the night for the first time in weeks." "Good, I've arranged for a visiting nurse. Daily. She starts tomorrow." "I didn't ask." "I know, but you would have eventually, and I prefer to be ahead of need." He set down his glass. "This is how I operate, Arya. I identify what matters to the people who matter to me, and I secure it. It's not kindness, it's strategy, but the result is the same." I didn't know what to say to that. Gratitude felt like surrender. Suspicion felt like ingratitude. I settled on silence and returned to the files. We landed in Zurich under slate-gray skies. Another car, another seamless transition. The city was cleaner than Milan, quieter, built on the bones of discretion and numbered accounts. We drove to a restaurant that didn't advertise, the kind of place where presidents and arms dealers shared tables and no one took photographs. Herr Fischer was waiting in a private room. 60s, silver-haired, with the posture of a man who'd never doubted his place in the world. He stood when we entered, his eyes sliding over me with the barest flicker of calculation. Massimo, punctual as always. His Italian was serviceable but German-accented. "Klaus, may I introduce Arya Santoro, my executive assistant?" Fisher's handshake was dry brief. "Charming, please sit." The meal was theater. 7 courses, each paired with wine I barely touched. Fisher made small talk about Swiss banking reforms, European markets, the weather, all of it meaningless, all of it building towards something. I took notes on my tablet, capturing everything, watching for the moment when performance would shift to purpose. It came during dessert. Fisher switched to German, his voice dropping half an octave. "The Kovalenko situation, you've heard." "I've heard," Massimo replied in the same language. "They're moving assets out of Cyprus, looking for alternate structures. Basel is too exposed. Luxembourg is saturated. They need something creative." Massimo glanced at me, a tiny flick of his eyes. I typed without looking at the keyboard, transcribing in real time, noting how Fisher's pupils dilated slightly when he said creative. Excitement masked as caution. "Creative implies risk," Massimo said. "Risk implies premium." "Naturally, but these are serious people, the kind who remember favors and injuries. A pause. In that pause I heard the threat. Fisher was dangling access to dangerous wealth but also dangerous obligation. I typed, pressure point. Once you leverage to Kovalenko interests, decline or counter. Massimo read my screen, his expression unchanging. I appreciate the introduction, Klaus, but my firm doesn't take positions that compromise our operational independence. If the Kovalenkos need discrete structures, I can recommend 3 other facilitators who specialize in Eastern European capital. I'll send you names by tomorrow. Fisher's smile tightened. You're certain this is significant opportunity? I'm certain. My business model depends on neutrality. The moment I owe loyalty to one faction, I become a target for others. I'm sure you understand. I did. He was drawing a line between facilitation and allegiance. Fisher nodded slowly, disappointed but not surprised. The rest of the meeting was wind down, pleasantries and espresso. When we left, Massimo's hand found the small of my back again, guiding me through the restaurant's discreet exit. In the car, he was silent until we'd pulled away from the curb. Then, you caught the leverage play. He wanted you dependent. Yes, good, that's why you're here. Not just to translate words, but to read the spaces between them. He looked at me fully for the first time since we'd landed. You did well, better than well. Most people would have missed the shift in his breathing when he mentioned Cyprus. I had noticed that too, the way Fisher's chest rose just slightly faster when he named the location. Geography as tell. What happens now? I asked. Now I send him referrals like I promised, maintain the relationship without the obligation, and make a note that Klaus is becoming sloppy in his old age. Desperation makes people careless. He leaned back in the seat. And you get your first real paycheck. How does it feel? Like I sold something I didn't know I owned. No, he said quietly. You sold something you've always owned but no one valued correctly. There's a difference. We didn't fly back immediately. Massimo had a second meeting, this time with a woman who ran an art acquisition firm that specialized in provenance clarification, which I quickly understood meant laundering stolen paintings through legal markets. I sat beside him, translated French into Italian, and tried not to think about the Caravaggio sketch she casually mentioned moving through Geneva. By the time we boarded the jet for Milan, it was dark. I was exhausted. Massimo handed me a blanket and a glass of red wine. You'll sleep on the flight, he said. Tomorrow I need you rested. We have a dinner in Como, more observation, less translation, but these guests are complicated. Your world seems to specialize in complicated. It's the only kind of world worth living in. Simple is for people who don't pay attention. He dimmed the cabin lights. Sleep, Arya, you're safe here. I wanted to argue that safety was relative, that nothing about this was safe. But the leather seat was warm, the blanket soft, and the exhaustion pulled me under before I could form the words. I woke to the sound of rain on the fuselage and Massimo speaking in low tones on the phone. His voice was different, softer. He was speaking Calabrian, not the formal Italian, but the dialect of my grandmother's village. I listened without opening my eyes. Sai domani mattina. Il medico è vizio quello che ti ho detto, non preoccuparti, I grave già pagato. Sai, tua nipote sta bene, sta lavorando. Sai con me. No sta al sicuro, ti lo prometo. He was talking to Nana, promising her I was safe, telling her about a Swiss doctor tomorrow morning. I opened my eyes. He was watching me, phone still at his ear. No apology in his expression, no embarrassment at being caught. She wants to speak with you, he said, switching to Italian, handing me the phone. Nana. Nipote, this man, this Caldari, his father saved your grandfather's life once. Many years ago, before you were born, I told him this. He says he remembers, says the debt still stands. Her voice cracked. Be careful, amare mio. These families, they keep ledgers in blood. My throat closed. Massimo watched me, his face unreadable. I will, Nana, I promise. When I hung up, I handed the phone back. You didn't tell me you knew my family. I didn't know until 2 days ago. My assistant does thorough background checks. Your grandfather worked for my father in the 80s. A shipping dispute in Gioia Toro. Things went wrong. My father extracted your grandfather before it turned violent. Your family has been clean ever since. Off the board. I intend to keep it that way. Is that why you hired me? To settle a debt? I hired you because you're exceptional. The debt is why I'm making sure nothing touches you or your grandmother. He poured himself water. The Swiss specialist arrives at your grandmother's home at 9. He's the best in Europe for her condition. The consultation is covered. So is treatment if she's eligible. I should have said thank you. Instead, I said, this is a very beautiful chain you're putting around my neck. Yes, he said simply, but it's still gold. The villa in Como was something from a film. Stone and cypress trees, terraced gardens that stepped down to the black mirror of the lake. I had my own room, bigger than my entire apartment in Milan, with a balcony and a bathroom clad in marble that caught the light like honey. A woman named Chiara, who introduced herself as Massimo's head of household, brought me a selection of clothes in my exact size. Dresses, business suits, evening wear, all of it elegant, none of it flashy. Signor Caldari insists his people are well presented, she said, hanging the garments in the closet. These are yours. Consider them a work uniform. I can't accept. You can, and you will. He's particular about these things, she smiled. Don't overthink it, Cara. Massimo takes care of his own, always has. You're lucky to be counted among them. I wanted to argue that luck and coercion often wore the same face, but the dress she'd laid out for tonight's dinner was dove gray silk, and when I tried it on, I barely recognized myself. I looked like I belonged. That was either freedom or the deepest trap. Dinner was on the terrace, 10 guests arranged around a table set with more silverware than I'd seen in my life. Massimo sat at the head. I sat to his right, a position of honor or display, maybe both. The guests were a mix, a German industrialist, an Austrian countess with ties to old money, 2 brothers who ran a shipping concern out of Genoa, a Romanian property developer, and others whose exact occupations remained artfully vague. The conversation flowed in 4 languages. I translated when signaled, kept silent otherwise, and watched Massimo orchestrate the evening like a maestro. He was brilliant at it. The way he drew out the Countess's opinion on EU trade regulations while simultaneously flattering the industrialist's new factory initiative. The way he made each person feel seen without ever giving away his own position. Power as performance. Control as charm. Halfway through the meal, the conversation shifted to art. The Romanian mentioned a private collection coming to auction in Venice. Rare pieces, questionable provenance. I heard the Bellini fragment is part of the lot, the Countess said. The one that disappeared from Padua in 1997. One of the Genoese brothers laughed. Disappeared, what a polite word. It's been authenticated, Massimo asked, his tone merely curious. 3 independent experts, all of whom will swear it spent the last 25 years in a private Swiss collection. Very clean paperwork. I saw the signal then, the way the Romanian's eyes flicked to Massimo, seeking approval or alliance. This wasn't casual conversation. This was an invitation to participate in something that existed in the gray margins of legality. Massimo smiled. Remarkable what good paperwork can accomplish. The table laughed. The moment passed, but I'd seen it. The casual exchange that moved stolen art through legitimate channels, and I'd said nothing, done nothing, just sat there in my borrowed silk and played my part. After dinner, Massimo walked me through the garden while the others took coffee in the salon. The night air was cool off the water, carrying the scent of jasmine and old stone. You're troubled, he said. That Bellini, it's stolen. Yes, and they're just laundering it while drinking your wine on your terrace. He stopped walking, turned to face me. Did you think my world was clean? I told you, gray areas, complicated situations. These people move goods and capital across borders that don't want to be crossed. Some of what they move is art, some is money, some is information. I don't ask them to be saints. I ask them to follow certain rules when they're under my roof. What rules? No violence, no exploitation of those who can't defend themselves, no business that makes me a target of governments I can't afford to antagonize. He stepped closer. I know where the lines are, Arya. I built my organization by respecting them. You don't have to like what you see, you just have to understand it. And if I can't, then we'll revisit our agreement. He touched my face, just his fingertips against my jaw, tilting my head up. But I think you understand more than you want to admit. You're standing in a garden that was built by men who moved other people's money. Wearing a dress I bought with profits from ventures your government would prefer not to examine. Worrying about a painting while your grandmother sleeps peacefully because I arranged care she couldn't otherwise access. You're already complicit, Bella. The question is whether you can live with it. His thumb brushed my lower lip. Every nerve in my body lit up. I should have stepped back. I didn't. This is a line, I whispered. Yes, tell me where it is and I won't cross it. I didn't answer. His mouth found mine, soft at first, then deeper, his hand sliding into my hair. I tasted wine and want, and the terrifying relief of surrendering to something I'd been fighting since the moment I saw him watching me through that car window. When we broke apart, I was shaking. Inside, I said, not here. He smiled. See, you know where your lines are. That's more than most people manage. We walked back to the villa in silence, his hand at the small of my back, that gesture that meant protection and possession, and something I didn't have words for yet. At my door, he kissed my forehead, chaste, almost brotherly, and left me alone. I didn't sleep. I stood on the balcony and watched the lake and wondered how many pieces of myself I'd already sold. The Swiss specialist arrived at Nana's apartment while I was still in Como. Massimo called me during breakfast to tell me the news. Treatable. Experimental drug therapy, not approved in Italy but available through clinical trial in Geneva. He'd already enrolled her. Transportation arranged. Accommodations near the clinic. You're moving her out of the country, I said. I'm giving her a chance to live past Christmas. Would you prefer I asked your permission first, or let her die while we debated ethics? I hated that he was right. I want to see the trial documentation. Already sent to your email, along with the clinic's credentials, the specialist's CV, and testimonials from 6 previous patients. I'm thorough, Arya, not reckless. When does she travel? Next week. You'll accompany her. We'll be in Geneva anyway for another meeting. You can settle her in, then return to work. Work as if this was normal. As if I hadn't crossed a dozen lines I didn't know existed a week ago. Thank you, I forced out. You're welcome. Now finish your coffee. We leave for Milan in 20 minutes. Tonight there's an event at the Pinacoteca di Brera, cultural fundraiser. You'll wear the midnight blue dress. Pearls. I'm being honored for a donation to the Restoration Fund. You're being honored for laundering reputation through art donations. Yes, but the Bellini altarpiece they're restoring is genuinely magnificent. Sometimes good things emerge from complex motives. You'll see. The Brera was magnificent. Frescoed ceilings and marble halls filled with Renaissance masters and the scent of old money. Massimo wore black tie like a second skin. I wore the midnight blue and the pearls he'd left in my room, real ones, heavy and cool against my throat. We moved through the crowd like dancers, him greeting patrons and politicians, me translating fragments of conversation when necessary, mostly just being seen beside him. His translator, his assistant, his something. I was admiring a Raphael when I noticed the man watching us. Mid-40s, expensively dressed, with eyes that calculated more than appreciated. He was speaking with an older woman who wore enough diamonds to fund a school, but his attention was on Massimo. "Who is that?" I murmured. Massimo followed my gaze, and something shifted in his posture. Subtle, just his shoulders drawing back a fraction. Alessio Rixey, competitor of mine, operates out of Turin. His approach is less refined than mine. Meaning? Meaning he still believes fear is the most efficient currency. It's not. Gratitude is. Before I could respond, Rixey crossed the gallery toward us, the woman trailing in his wake. Caldari, what an unexpected pleasure. His Italian was Florentine, cultured. His smile was crocodile. Rixey, still collecting art, I see. Among other things, Rixey's eyes slid to me. And you've collected something new as well, how charming. Every muscle in Massimo's body tightened. Aria is my executive assistant. Perhaps you'd like an introduction to the Restoration Committee instead. I'm sure they'd love to hear about your interests. The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Rixey's smile widened. Another time, perhaps. Enjoy the evening. Beautiful work, these Raphaels. Such a shame when beautiful things end up in the wrong hands. He left. The woman followed. Massimo took my elbow, steering me toward a quieter corridor. We're leaving. But the ceremony can continue without me. Rixey's presence here isn't coincidence. He's sending a message. What message? That he knows about you, which means he's been watching, which means he's planning something. We exited through a side entrance where the driver already waited, engine running. Inside the car, Massimo made 3 phone calls in rapid succession, his voice clipped and controlled. When he hung up, he looked at me. Tomorrow I'm moving you into the villa, full time. Your apartment isn't secure. You can't just. I can, and I will. Your lease will be handled, your belongings moved. You'll have your own wing, your own space, but you'll be where I can keep you safe. Safe from what? From men like Rixey who use people as leverage. He leaned forward, his voice dropping. You're a vulnerability now. He'll have noted your face, your name, your relationship to me. The moment I care about something, it becomes a target. That's the cost of this world. I won't apologize for it, but I will protect you from it. By making me your prisoner. By making you my responsibility. His hand found mine in the dark. I'm not asking, Arya, I'm telling you, this is how it has to be. I should have fought, should have demanded my autonomy. But his hand was warm and his eyes were worried in a way I hadn't seen before, and I realized I'd already made my choice the night I took his envelope. One condition, I said. I see my grandmother whenever I want, no restrictions. Agreed. In fact, we'll move her to the villa too once she's stable enough. The medical wing has full-time nursing staff. Of course it did. Massimo's world had everything except escape routes. We drove through Milan in silence, the city lights streaking past like evidence of a life I'd left behind. When we arrived at the villa, Chiara was waiting with tea and too much understanding in her eyes. Your rooms are ready, Signorina. I took the liberty of having some of your things brought over. I didn't ask how she'd gotten into my apartment. I was learning not to ask questions I didn't want answered. That night I stood in my new room, larger, quieter, more beautiful than anywhere I'd ever lived, and felt like I was drowning in silk sheets. I opened the balcony doors and breathed the Como air and tried to remember who I'd been 2 weeks ago. A knock at my door. Massimo stood in the hallway, still in his tuxedo, holding 2 glasses of brandy. Can't sleep either, I asked. I wanted to apologize for moving too fast, for not giving you more choice. You're not sorry. No, but I recognize you deserve the courtesy of pretending. He handed me a glass. Your grandmother called. She wanted you to know the specialist thinks she'll live to see spring, maybe longer. My throat closed. Spring. At minimum, the trial is promising. She's strong. He sipped his brandy. She also told me to take care of you, said you inherited your grandfather's pride and your mother's stubbornness, that I'd need patience. She's right. I know, he set down his glass. I'm not good at patience, Arya. I'm good at control, at logistics, at identifying what I want and securing it. But you require something different, and I'm learning. What are you learning? That some things can't be arranged or bought. That trust is earned even when all other currencies have been spent. He stepped closer. That I care more than is strategically wise. That you're not just an asset. He stopped. It's late, I should let you rest. But he didn't move. Neither did I. The space between us hummed with all the things we weren't saying, all the lines we were approaching without crossing. Massimo. Yes. Thank you for Nana, for all of it. He nodded, then left before I could say anything more, pulling the door closed behind him with a soft click that sounded like promise and warning in equal measure. I drank the brandy and watched the lake turn silver with moonlight, and wondered how many more nights I'd spend in beautiful cages, calling them choices. Morning came with autumn sunlight and the smell of espresso. I found Massimo in the breakfast room, reading financial papers in 3 languages, his laptop open to screens I didn't try to interpret. There's someone I want you to meet, he said without preamble. At the clinic, this afternoon, before we settle your grandmother. Who? A friend of my father's, someone who knew your grandfather. I thought it might be helpful for context. Context? Such a careful word for legacy and blood and debts that survived generations. We drove to Milan in the late morning, the city dressed in November gray. The clinic was in a restored palazzo near Corso Venezia, the kind of place where wealthy people came to suffer beautifully. Nana was already there, installed in a private room with a view of a garden she'd never be able to afford in her ordinary life. She looked small in the bed, but her eyes were bright when she saw me. We spoke in dialect, rapid and low, while Massimo waited in the hallway with the discretion of someone who understood privacy had value. He's dangerous, Nipote, she said, holding my hand. His father was dangerous, but they are not cruel, remember that. Dangerous does not mean cruel. What happened with Nano? Your grandfather saw something he should not have seen, at the docks, a shipment that was not what it claimed to be. Massimo's father, Domenico, he could have killed your grandfather. Others wanted to, but Domenico said no. Said your grandfather was a good man who'd made an innocent mistake. He moved him to an office position, kept him safe, kept our whole family safe. She touched my face. That debt has lived in my chest for 40 years. Now the sun is keeping you safe. These men, they understand obligation, honor it, but do not mistake obligation for freedom. I kissed her forehead, promised to visit tomorrow, and left her to rest. Too much and forgot nothing. Arya, this is Tommaso Viri. He worked with both our fathers. Tommaso's handshake was firm. You have your grandfather's eyes. He was a good man, cautious, paid attention. He glanced at Massimo. I'll say what needs saying. Your grandfather stumbled into a weapons shipment in 1983. Soviet hardware moving through Gioia Tauro to North Africa. Domenico Caldari could have eliminated him, should have by the logic of that business. But Domenico had a different code. He believed in proportionate response. Your grandfather wasn't a threat, just unlucky. So Domenico protected him, moved him away from the docks, kept him employed, kept your family out of the crossfire when things got ugly between the organizations. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because Massimo is like his father in every way that matters, and because you should know the debt was real, but debt and love are not the same currency. Domenico protected your grandfather because it was the right thing, not because he expected repayment. What Massimo is doing for you, that's his choice, not obligation. He left us then, disappearing down the corridor like a ghost of a complicated past. You didn't have to arrange that, I said. I wanted you to hear it from someone with no reason to lie. Tommaso has been retired for 15 years. He has no stake in my organization. If he says my father's protection was genuine, it was. Massimo touched the small of my back. Your family owes me nothing, Arya. What I give you is because I choose to. Remember that when it gets difficult. When not if. I prefer honesty to false comfort. We left the clinic and drove toward Como, the highway unreeling beneath us like a line being drawn. I watched Milan recede in the mirrors and felt the last threads of my old life snap. The next 2 weeks were a strange domesticity punctuated by violence that never quite touched me directly. I translated at meetings where men discussed shipping routes and product diversification in language that meant contraband and corruption. I sat beside Massimo at dinners where art and money changed hands beneath the conversation. I learned to read a room the way some people read weather, barometric shifts in power, fronts moving through, the pressure before lightning. And Massimo, he kept his distance. Polite, professional, never crossing into my rooms after dark, never pushing beyond that single kiss in the garden. It should have been a relief. Instead, it felt like waiting for an inevitable storm. The break came at a gallery opening in Milan. Contemporary art, champagne, the usual beautiful people saying important things about nothing. Massimo was networking with a Swiss banker when I noticed Rixai across the room, watching me with that calculating stare. He approached while Massimo was occupied, his smile all teeth and threat. Signorina Santoro, alone at last. I'm not alone. I glanced toward Massimo, but he was deep in conversation, the banker's back blocking his view. For the moment, Rixai sipped his champagne. I've been curious about you, Caldari's new acquisition. Tell me, what does it feel like to be so thoroughly owned? I'm his employee, not his property. Ah, but employment suggests choice. Tell me, did you choose to move into his villa? Did you choose to have your grandmother enrolled in a Swiss trial that happens to be funded by a Caldari shell company? Or did you simply accept the terms of your very elegant captivity? My jaw tightened. What do you want? Information. A simple thing. You translate for him. You hear things. I'd pay well for certain details. Meeting schedules, client names. The kind of mundane intelligence that would be easy for you to share and very valuable to me. No. Don't answer quickly. Think about it. Think about how vulnerable your grandmother is in that clinic, how easily Swiss medical visas can be revoked, how accidents happen even in the best facilities. The threat was so casual it took a moment to register. When it did, my blood went cold. You're threatening an old woman. I'm pointing out reality. Caldari has made you a weakness. I'm offering you a way to protect yourself. Share a few details. Ensure your grandmother's safety. Everyone wins. He placed a card in my hand. My number. Call when you're ready to be practical. He walked away. I stood frozen, the card burning in my palm, rage and fear warring in my chest. When Massimo found me 5 minutes later, he knew immediately. What did he say? He wants me to spy for him, threaten Nana if I don't. Massimo's expression went stone cold. Show me the card. I handed it over. He looked at it once, then pocketed it. His hand found my elbow, steering me toward the exit with controlled urgency. In the car, he made a single phone call. Move the grandmother tonight. Transfer her to the Geneva facility. Full security detail. No one accesses her except approved medical staff. He listened then. I don't care what it costs. Do it. When he hung up, he looked at me. Nana will be in Geneva by midnight. Private flight, guarded transport, secure wing of the clinic. Rixai won't touch her. He threatened her because of me. He threatened her because he's desperate, which makes him reckless, which makes him vulnerable. Massimo's voice was quiet but lethal. This is my fault. I should have moved faster, should have anticipated. What are you going to do? What I always do, apply the appropriate pressure until the problem resolves itself. He took my hand. I need you to trust me. Can you do that? I looked at our joined hands, his scarred and steady, mine trembling. I don't have much choice. You always have choice, but I'm asking you to choose me. Choose to believe I'll keep you and your grandmother safe, that I'll handle Ricks without making you complicit in anything you can't live with. The car pulled into the villa. Inside, the house was quiet. Massimo walked me to my rooms, then stopped at the threshold. I want to come in, he said. Not for what you think, just I don't want to be alone tonight, and I don't think you do either. I opened the door wider. He followed me inside, shed his jacket, and sat on the couch near the window. I poured 2 glasses of wine and sat beside him, close enough to feel his warmth. Tell me something true, I said. About what? About you. Something that isn't strategy or organization or legacy. He was quiet for a long moment. I wanted to be an architect when I was young. Before my father explained that our family built different kinds of structures, he told me I could design buildings or I could design power. Buildings fall, power endures. He sipped his wine. I chose power. Most days I don't regret it. Some days I wonder what I could have built if I'd chosen differently. It's not too late. It is. I'm too far in. Too many people depend on the systems I've created. Too many families eat because I facilitate their deals. Too many politicians stay elected because I solve their problems. I'm the infrastructure now. If I collapse, a lot falls with me. That sounds like a prison. It's a responsibility, and I've learned to love it. But sometimes, he looked at me, sometimes I see you and I remember what it felt like to want something simple, something that wasn't about leverage or strategy, just wanting. The air between us thickened. I set down my wine glass. I'm not simple, I said. I know, that's why I want you. He kissed me then, slow and deep, his hands gentle in my hair. I kissed him back, tasting wine and want and the terrifying truth that I was falling into something I couldn't control. When we finally broke apart, I was breathless. Stay, I whispered. If I stay, I won't want to leave, and you're not ready for that. How do you know what I'm ready for? Because I'm paying attention, because I care about your readiness more than my want. He stood, kissed my forehead. Sleep. Tomorrow we go to Geneva. You'll be with your grandmother. I'll handle Rixai, and then we'll figure out what comes next. He left. I sat in the dark and touched my lips and wondered if falling in love with a dangerous man was the bravest or most foolish thing I'd ever done. Geneva was gray and cold, the clinic perched on a hillside with views of the lake and the Alps beyond. Nana looked better, color in her cheeks, strength in her voice. The trial medication was working. She'd lived to see spring. Maybe summer, maybe more. You look different, she said, studying my face. Innamorata, in love. It's complicated. Love is always complicated. The question is whether it's worth the complication. She took my hand. His father loved my cousin once, before your grandmother. Domenico Caldari, he was not a good man in many ways, but he was constant, loyal. When he gave his word, he kept it. Massimo is the same. If he has chosen you, he will not unchoose you. That is both gift and burden. How do I know I'm choosing him, or just surviving what he's arranged? You'll know when the moment comes where you could walk away and he would let you. That's when you'll know. If you stay, then it's choice. If you run, it's fear. Both are honest. She closed her eyes. I'm tired, Nipote. Go, be young, make mistakes, fall in love with dangerous men. Just make sure you're awake when you do it. I left her sleeping and found Massimo in the consultation room with the Swiss specialist. They were discussing long-term care, contingencies, quality of life. He was planning for her death as carefully as he planned everything else, with thoroughness and respect and too much control. She's tired, I interrupted. Massimo nodded to the doctor, then followed me into the corridor. The prognosis is better than expected. The trial is extending her timeline significantly. They think she could have a year, maybe more. A year, more. Time I wouldn't have had without him. Time bought with money I didn't have and connections I couldn't access. Time that felt like grace and obligation tangled together. Thank you, I said. You keep thanking me. You don't owe me gratitude. Then what do I owe you? He considered this. Honesty. I want you to be honest with me about what you want, what you can tolerate, where your actual lines are, not the ones you think you should have, but the real ones. Right now, when you're ready. We left the clinic and drove to a restaurant overlooking the lake. Massimo's phone rang 3 times during lunch. Each time he glanced at it and silenced the call. On the fourth ring, he answered. His face changed. Not fear, Massimo didn't do fear, but calculation, rapid assessment. He spoke in Italian, his voice clipped. When, how many? No, don't engage, pull everyone back, I'll handle it. He hung up. We need to leave now. What happened? Rixai escalated. Financial police raided one of my warehouses in Turin. Anonymous tip about tax irregularities. They won't find anything, I'm meticulous. But it's a shot across the bow. He's using institutions as weapons. In the car, he made a series of calls, his voice never rising, his instructions precise. Lawyers mobilized. Accountants dispatched. A press statement prepared. The machinery of his organization responding to threat with coordinated efficiency. Where are we going? I asked. Milan, I need to be visible, need to show calm. This is about optics now. If I hide, it looks like guilt. If I go about my business, it looks like confidence. He glanced at me. You don't have to come. I can have you taken back to Como. I'm coming with you. This could get uglier. Rixai is trying to destabilize me, make me look vulnerable, make my associates nervous. Then they should see me beside you, should see that you're not rattled. He smiled, a real smile, not the calculated ones he used in meetings. You're learning the game. I have a good teacher. We drove to Milan in gathering darkness. The city was bright and indifferent, oblivious to the war being waged in boardrooms and back channels. Massimo's phone rang constantly. Each call he took with the same level voice, the same measured responses. Never panic, never anger, just cold strategic thinking. By the time we reached the villa, it was midnight. Chiara had coffee waiting. Massimo's senior advisors were assembled in his study, 5 men and 2 women who ran various pieces of his empire. I sat in the corner and listened. The raid was clean, one of the men said. They took copies of records, but everything's documented. They won't find irregularities because there aren't any. Rixai's move isn't about finding evidence, Massimo said. It's about creating doubt. He wants my associates to wonder if I'm compromised, if I'm worth the risk. So we demonstrate strength, one of the women said. Show we're not disrupted. Exactly, business continues. All scheduled meetings proceed. I'll make myself very public this week. Visible, confident, he glanced at me. Arya comes to everything. I want them to see I'm not hiding, not scrambling. One of the advisors frowned. Is that wise? She becomes a target. She's already a target. At least this way she's a protected target. And Rixai sees I'm not afraid for her to be seen. Massimo stood. Send word to everyone in my network. Normal operations, no deviation. Anyone who panics gets cut loose. This is a test of nerve. We don't blink. The meeting dispersed. I stayed behind, watching Massimo pour himself a drink with hands that didn't shake. You're using me as a signal, I said. Yes. I could resent that. You could, but you're too smart. You understand that in this world everything is signal, everything communicates. The fact that you're here calm, translating at my side, that tells people I'm in control, that I'm not afraid, that I still have enough confidence to care about something beyond immediate survival. What if Rixai comes after me directly? Then he crosses a line that gets him killed. Massimo's voice was flat, final. There are rules in our world, unspoken ones. You don't target civilians who haven't chosen to be players. You don't threaten children. You don't use rape or torture as tools. These rules exist because without them we devolve into chaos. Rixai is testing boundaries. If he crosses that one, Every organization in northern Italy will sanction him, including his own people. That's your protection, mutual assured destruction. That's civilization. We're not that different from governments or corporations. We have rules, consequences, systems. Ours are just more explicit. I sat on the edge of his desk. What if I won out right now? What if I said I'm done? He looked at me for a long time. Then I'd have you driven to Como, your things packed. Your grandmother moved to whatever facility you choose. The contract paid out in full. And I'd make sure Rixai understood you're off the board, protected even in absence. You'd just let me go. I'd hate it, but yes, because keeping you against your will makes me the thing I'm trying not to be. He set down his glass. But I'm hopping you don't want out. I'm hopping you're asking because you need to know the exit exists, that you're choosing to stay, not trapped into staying. He was right. I needed to know the door was unlocked. That made all the difference between captivity and commitment. I'm staying, I said, but I need something from you. Name it. Teach me, not just translation. Teach me how this works, how to read the room, how to see what you see. If I'm going to be in your world, I want to understand it, not just observe it. He smiled. That's the first truly dangerous thing you've asked for. Knowledge makes you complicit, makes you responsible for what you know. I'm already complicit. I just want to be competent. All right, I'll teach you. But once you know, you can't unknow. Once you see how power moves, you can't pretend it's invisible. I understand. He kissed me then, pulling me close, his hands firm on my waist. When we broke apart, he rested his forehead against mine. You're my weakness, he whispered. Rixai saw that. Anyone with eyes can see it. And I don't know if I can protect you and keep you close at the same time, but I'm going to try. Then we'll be weak together, I said, and make it work anyway. The next week was intensive education in organized crime as functional business. Massimo walked me through ledgers that tracked legitimate imports alongside creative accounting, showed me how shipping containers moved through ports with paperwork that told 3 different stories depending on who was reading, explained the web of shell companies and offshore accounts that made money impossible to trace. The key, he said one evening in his study, is legitimacy. 80% of what I do is completely legal. Import-export, property management, consulting. The other 20% funds itself through the infrastructure of the 80%. The more legitimate you are, the better you can hide what isn't. And Rixai. Rixai still operates like it's 1985. Intimidation, violence, bribery that looks like bribery. He's old guard, which makes him visible, which makes him vulnerable. So you're going to use his outdated methods against him. I'm going to let him destroy himself. He's already made the mistake of involving government institutions. Once you start pulling on those threads, you can't control where they lead. The financial police may have raided my warehouse, but now they're asking questions, looking at records, noticing patterns, and Rixai's operations don't hold up to scrutiny like mine do. You're setting him up. I'm letting the system do what systems do. Rixai created the investigation. I'm just making sure it doesn't stop at my door. It was brilliant and terrifying, because it meant Massimo had thought 12 moves ahead before Rixai had finished his first. The end game came at a cultural event, a gala at La Scala, celebrating the reopening of a restored theater wing. Massimo had donated significantly. We were seated in a private box, visible to everyone, the picture of calm prosperity. Rixai was there too, 3 boxes over, radiating barely controlled rage. The financial investigation had expanded. 2 of his warehouses were now under scrutiny. His associates were distancing themselves. He was bleeding credibility and capital. During intermission, he cornered us in the lobby, his voice low and furious. You did this. The investigation, you fed them information. Massimo sipped his champagne. I provided the authorities with nothing. You created your own vulnerabilities. I simply didn't interfere when they noticed. You're finished. You think you can hide behind legitimacy and lawyers. This isn't over. Actually, it is. Your organization is voting tonight on new leadership. I've been told they're leaning toward someone with a more modern approach, someone who doesn't draw regulatory attention. Massimo's smile was sharp cold. You're done, Alessio. Not because I destroyed you, because you destroyed yourself. I just didn't save you. Rixai's face went purple. Security was already moving toward us, not to protect us but to escort him out. The theater management didn't tolerate disturbances. He left cursing and I knew we'd won. In the car afterward, Massimo was quiet. You're not celebrating, I said. Destroying a man isn't cause for celebration, even when he deserves it. Rixai was once someone's son, someone's brother. He built an empire too, just a cruder one. Now it's ash. That's not victory, that's just survival. You sound almost sorry for him. I'm sorry for what we become when we choose this life, the calculations we make, the pieces of ourselves we trade for power and safety. He took my hand. I don't regret protecting you, but I regret that protection required destruction. That's the price. Always. We drove to Como in silence. When we arrived, Chiara met us with news. Nana had taken a turn, not worse, better. The doctors wanted to release her from the clinic. She was stable enough to come home. Home? The word carried weight now. Massimo's villa had become home somehow. The rooms I'd thought of as beautiful prison had become sanctuary. The man I'd feared had become. What? Lover, partner, keeper. All of those and none of them, something I didn't have language for yet. We brought Nana to Como the next day. She moved into the medical wing with its view of the lake and its staff of competent nurses. She held court from her bed, receiving visitors, telling stories, bossing Chiara around in cheerful Calabrian dialect. You've done well for yourself, Nipote, she said one afternoon. This is better than I hoped. It's complicated. Love is always complicated, but these complications include good medical care and a view of mountains. I've survived worse. She squeezed my hand. Your grandfather would approve. He understood men like Massimo, men who live in gray spaces but keep their word. You could do worse. I had. Every terrible boyfriend, every bad decision, every choice made from fear or scarcity. This was better. Stranger but better. Winter came to Como with snow and short days and the kind of cold that made the villa's fires feel like luxury instead of excess. Massimo and I fell into a rhythm. He taught me the business. I translated, consulted, offered perspective he valued. We shared meals and stories and increasingly nights. Not every night, but enough that I stopped thinking of my rooms as separate from his. It wasn't traditional, it wasn't simple, but it was ours, built on understanding instead of illusion, partnership instead of possession. I want to go back to school, I said one morning over breakfast. Finish my degree, maybe teach eventually. Then you'll go back to school, I'll arrange it. I don't want you to arrange it, I want to earn it. He smiled. Then earn it, apply, study. I'll support you, not replace your effort. He poured more coffee. What will you study? Translation theory, ethics of interpretation, the ways language shapes power. You'll be brilliant at it. He said it like fact, not flattery. That spring, Nana's health stabilized. The trial medication worked. She gained weight, strength, mobility. The doctors talked about years, not months. She spent her days in the garden, tending herbs, telling stories to the household staff who learned to love her sharp wit and sharper observations. One evening she asked to speak with Massimo privately. I watched them through the window, her tiny in her chair, him sitting cross-legged at her feet like a supplicant. When they finished, he came to find me. She gave us her blessing, he said. For what? For whatever we decide this is. She said your grandfather would have liked me, that I remind her of men who kept their word even when it was inconvenient. He looked almost vulnerable. She also said if I ever hurt you, She'll haunt me from whatever afterlife Calabrian grandmothers go to. I believe her. I laughed. She would. She's terrifying when she wants to be. I'm counting on it. I like the idea of divine retribution if I fail you. Keeps me honest. That summer, I enrolled in university. Attended classes while still working for Massimo part-time. It was exhausting and exhilarating, and exactly what I needed. My thesis focused on the ethics of translation in criminal justice contexts. My advisor had no idea I was writing from experience. Massimo's organization shifted toward increasingly legitimate ventures. He divested from the gray market operations, reinvested in legal imports and real estate and consulting. It wasn't complete transformation. Some shadows remained, but the trajectory was clear. He was building something that could survive scrutiny, something he could be proud of. Why the change? I asked one night. You, he said simply. I want to build something you don't have to make excuses for, something our children could inherit without shame. Our children. Hypothetically, eventually, if you wanted. He looked nervous, actually nervous, this man who faced down criminal syndicates without flinching. I'm asking, Arya, not arranging, not assuming, asking. I kissed him instead of answering. Some things didn't need words. Nana died on a Tuesday in October, with autumn light streaming through the windows and the smell of baking bread from the kitchen below. She went peacefully, surrounded by people who loved her, her rosary in her hands. The hospice we'd feared never came. She'd had almost 2 years beyond her diagnosis. 2 years of comfort and dignity and love. I held her hand while she slipped away, and Massimo stood behind me, his hand on my shoulder, steady and solid. At the funeral, half the village in Calabria came. Old men who remembered my grandfather. Women who'd grown up with Nana. They filled the small church and spilled into the courtyard, speaking the dialect that felt like home, sharing stories of a woman who'd survived loss and poverty and exile with her humor intact. Massimo paid for everything. The funeral, the wake, the memorial. He never made it about debt or obligation. Just did it because it needed doing and he could. After, in the quiet of the villa, I cried properly for the first time. Massimo held me while I shattered, then helped me gather the pieces. She was ready, I said when I could breathe again. She told me last week, said she'd seen enough, that she was tired of being old. She lived well at the end. That's rare gift. Because of you. Because of us, he corrected. You made the choice to let me help. You navigated this world without losing yourself. You gave her 2 years she wouldn't have had. That's you, Arya, not me. Maybe, or maybe it was both of us, tangled together in ways I couldn't separate anymore. 3 years later, I defended my dissertation. Massimo sat in the back of the lecture hall, watching me answer questions about linguistic power and interpretive ethics. When I finished, he stood and applauded, the only one who did, but he didn't care. He'd never cared about appearances when it came to me. We married that summer on the terrace at Como, overlooking the lake. Small ceremony. Close friends. Tommaso Viri officiated, this old man who'd known both our families, who understood what we were building on top of complicated legacies. You're choosing this, he said during the ceremony. Not obligated to it, not trapped by it, choosing, that makes all the difference. He was right. Every day I chose Massimo. Chose the complex partnership we'd built. Chose the life that combined his world and mine into something new. Something that acknowledged the shadows but built toward light. I taught linguistics at the university. Massimo ran his increasingly legitimate empire. We had arguments about ethics and compromise. We had long evenings discussing where lines should be drawn and redrawn. We had a life that was messy and honest in hours. 5 years after we met, I stood on the same terrace where we'd first kissed, watching snow fall on the lake. Massimo came out with 2 glasses of wine, wrapped a blanket around my shoulders. "What are you thinking?" he asked. That I used a car window as a mirror once, and the man inside saw me. I will. I know, I leaned into him. Thank you for that, for seeing me when I was invisible. You were never invisible, you just hadn't found your light yet. He kissed the top of my head, but I'm grateful I got to watch you find it. We stood there as the snow fell, two people who'd found each other in a moment of cold anonymity and built something warm and chosen. Not perfect, not simple, but honest. And that, I'd learned, was the only kind of love worth having. The kind you chose every day, even knowing the cost. The kind that turned mirrors into doorways. The kind that made weakness into strength and strangers into home.